parabolic growth is happening at the end of the lifespan of the boomers who started in 1971. They were like 18, 19, 20 years old. That was the beginning of their working life. Now we're at the very end of it. You see the parabolic move. And now what do you see? The parabolic move into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is for Millennial and Generation Z. They see the numbers, they see the mathematics there, that the exponential debt is not something, they're way too late to the Ponzi scheme of fiat, the fiat grid, to participate, right? So they're just going to go to Bitcoin. You see that in even places like India. This number is young Indians are turning to crypto instead of gold. A follow-up to that is Indians invested $38.8 billion in Bitcoin and crypto in the last 12 months, a huge 19,900% increase from 200 million just 1 year ago. You know, obviously gold is very ingrained in the population as a store of value. Now, the younger people there in India are buying Bitcoin and adopting Bitcoin.
Yeah, there has to be a word for something that means deja vu, but a continuous deja vu that is like annoyingly deja vu-like. Because, you know, this Indian story, the Indian population having 20,000 tons of gold is totally ingrained in their culture, their civilization for thousands of years, that gold is the way to go. And for 5 years now, since we first invested in Unicoin 5 years ago, the first Bitcoin exchange in India, we've been saying that the Indian mindset is going to shift to Bitcoin. And every time we say that, people have said, you're absolutely insane. That's never going to happen. And now it's happening. So it's, again, like a bad version of deja vu, where we've been right 100% of the time, almost without exception, on dozens and dozens of key points as it relates to sovereigns. Remember, we predicted a sovereign would take on Bitcoin like they have in El Salvador. We predicted India would take on Bitcoin. We predicted the hash wars. We predicted geothermal energy. And every step of the way, people have been viciously, violently, you know, trolling us. That's wrong. And man, I'm just right. Every day I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right again.
Right. In fact, there was a tweet stream somebody just retweeted from 2013 where you were, Dean Baker, who is an economist, was, you know, you were laughing at Japan going down the road of more money printing. And you said, hey, I've got my Bitcoin. And, you know, Bitcoin was like $500 then. He's like, yeah, good luck with that. Keep buying it, buddy. And obviously that's up many, many times over that. But again, you mentioned mindset. That mindset just shifts suddenly, and then you can't ever go back, right? So once these young people now they're all in Bitcoin, they see Bitcoin as digital gold, and there's no going back. They're not going to adopt their mom and grandmom's, you know, gold standard. So the mindset, and we talk about this all the time, about the shifting mindset of the younger generation and the split that's happening. And you see that in the words of Elvira Nabiullina of the Central Bank of Russia, what she's saying about why their plan to basically shock in all the markets with an interest rate increase. While Fed is in denial, hawkish Bank of Russia sees inflation as not transitory, warns of possible shock and awe rate hike. So consumer price inflation in Russia is red hot, having jumped 6% in May compared to a year ago, 2 percentage points above the Bank of Russia's target of 4%. Polls in Russia show that food inflation is a top concern, currently running at 7.4%. But he points out that, you know, they're increasing rates, while the Fed is saying that this bump in all the commodity prices and food inflation and all that stuff is just transitory. So they keep on surprising to the upside. They keep on surprising economists. In fact, Wall Street says Russia has been on the opposite trajectory of the U.S. Fed, surprising economists at every step along the way. This trajectory started on March 19 with a 25 basis point hike to 4.5% against the expectations of 27 of the 28 economists polled by Reuters who didn't expect a rate hike. On April 23rd, the Bank of Russia hiked its policy rate by 50 basis points to 5%. On June 11th, it hiked it another 50 basis points to 5.5%. The next policy meeting is scheduled for July 23rd, and the Central Bank of Russia has warned that it will expect to increase rates between 25 basis points and 100 basis points.
Right. Well, she's defending the currency. She's defending the ruble. That's the job of the central bank, to be, you know, to defend your national interest using interest rates. Only in the United States has the central bank abdicated their role of defending the rights of Americans in favor of the kleptocratic privileges of the oligarchs that run America. Oligarchs that run America.
Right. So the other thing is that a lot of economies, Russia being one of them, but many economies around the world don't like a lot of debt. So the U.S. seems to think that's a solution. I think that, okay, we'll just create another quadrillion in bad debts, and that will cause inflation to mask the inflation. They'll have deflation to mask the inflation. Well, you know, they seem to like try to balance those out rather than the price of money.
Right. So deflation is another, more accurately should be referred to as a soft default.
Yes.
So America's defaulting on their debt again, as they did in 1971. It was a massive default on American debt. They're defaulting on their debt again. And when you default on your debt, and Russia's already completely out of the dollar. They're not. They're like, I'm not touching that. Time now to return to our conversation with Mitch Firestein, author of Planet Ponzi. Mitch, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Okay, Greg Foss, a former high-yield bond trader turned Bitcoiner, says that a negative yielding bond is not an investment, and yet there is about $19 trillion seemingly invested in these bonds. What do you make of this?
Well, that's craziness because, you know, a lot of these funds have it in their, you know, prospectus. It's part of the mandate that they have to buy X amount of these bonds, no matter what. It doesn't talk about negative yield because when the prospectuses were set up for a lot of these pension funds, they mandated because they thought it was one of the safest investments that you could be in, to be in certain types of bonds and fixed income products. And a lot of the fixed income products you're talking about now are negative yielding, but you know, real interest rates are negative yielding when you look at it. You know, I said this to you years ago. I said, if I had anybody that worked for me that bought a negative yielding bond, I would fire them, quite frankly. I mean, there's no reason why anybody should buy a negative yielding bond. I mean, you should, if you have that sort of issue, you better find a better way to put your money to work than putting it into negative yielding bonds, because what that implies is there's zero credit risk. And a lot of these bonds that are trading at negative rates, there's more than zero credit risk, I can tell you. So what's happened is with the distortions by the central banks printing hundreds of trillions in cash and guarantees, equivalents, what they've done is distorted the market to such a point that people no longer know how to price risk, how to identify risk, and how to quantify risk. So the market pricing mechanism has been broken. And there are no adults in the room to come out and say, look, this is not the way that we should move forward if we want a booming economy. Right now, we're in the bottom of the ninth inning, and there's probably 2 outs. So I don't think that we have room to run here. I think that we're about to hit a brick wall, and it's not going to be very pretty. So trust has been eroded across the spectrum. I mean, you know, we had this infrastructure bill that was said that they're going to pass in the Senate with another $1 trillion or so dollars. You had the president come out 10 minutes later and change the game plan. So does that increase trust? You know, he denied what he said and said, oh, only if you give us $5 billion more for something else. So that doesn't help with the trust of government, which is at an all-time historic low in America. But equities prices are at an all-time high. Real estate valuations, including commercial real estate and residential real estate, are skyrocketing. You know, it makes houses unaffordable. And, you know, you've got the rentier class coming in now to buy up all the real estate with the cheap money from the Federal Reserve so that they can keep people as debt serfs. So, you know, you've got a very, very negative feedback loop going on here with these fake interest rates created by money printing. So you've got a lot of fake things going on that need to be resolved in the markets before we can really move forward.